Namaste. Welcome to Such Conversations Matter. Conversations which represent the future we should have. I'm your host, Saurabh Nanda. Today's guest is Lakshit Mittal. Lakshit is a management and policy consultant. He finished his engineering from Punjab Engineering College, Chandigarh, and which is one of the best in the country, and then decided to get on with the consultancy track, which a lot of engineers in India do. He worked with McKinsey and then ZS Associates, but he felt this need to see the impact of the work that he was doing. He couldn't see that impact because he was working mostly for overseas clients. And that's when he decided to actually do something about it. And he was one of the first people in India to join Ayushman Bharat, the national level insurance program that India runs, which is probably the biggest in the world, impacting 550 million people. He has worked with the National Health Authority in order to implement solutions, and we're going to talk about that a lot. And post that, he started his own organizations as well. Currently, he is the track chair of Health, Wellbeing and Youth in the Y20 Engagement Forum, which is a part of the G20 presidentship and all the programs associated with it, because India is the current G20 president. He's also a consultant with a tech startup working on healthcare in Gurgaon. In today's conversation, we are going to discuss with Lakshit a lot about how youth today can be involved in governance, in politics, and how we can actually change things from within. What are the various myths around joining politics and so on? Where is the modern India going? And then how to use technology, data to improve things. Lakshit and I first talked in one of those lockdown months in 2020, where I needed some help regarding finding the contact, of a particular person working in a big organization, and he was very kind enough to, share that with me. We then talked for more than 1 hour about all the things that both of us were doing, and how we shared the same ideals, and how we both wanted to engage youth in more governance oriented activities so that India can achieve its true potential and become a leadership beacon for the rest of the world. There's a lot to discuss, and that is why let's not waste any more time. Let me invite Lakshit over. Hi Lakshit, how are you?
Hi Saurabh, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm so glad finally we are able to do this. I think it's been a few months now.
Yeah, I think both of us had some busy schedule over the last few weeks. But so glad to be here finally and speaking to you and to you to people in your audience. So great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
The pleasure is all mine, Lakshit, and thank you for taking out the time to do this. Now, let me quickly begin by asking you a question which I ask all my guests, and I call myself a lockdown podcaster because that's when I finally started my podcast. So, how have the last 3 years been for you?
Interesting question to start with. Okay, so I think last 3 years have been pivotal for me. Right. Um, I was like last 3 years is like 2020, right? So like 2020 is when I ended up my stint of working with the government. So I was earlier working with Ayushman Bharat team. So I was part of the founding team of Ayushman Bharat government of India, right? So I was working there, and then I had just ended, resigned from there, and I entered political consulting, right? A domain that I knew little about, a domain that I was very fascinated about, right? So it was a pivotal in the sense for what it taught me, right? I like to quote it in like a PPP principle, right, where it is not a public-private partnership, but it is like, I really got to understand, what are people's priorities, how do they convert into political priorities, and how do they end up making into policy priorities, right? So that is the PPP framework, I think, that I learned, um, which otherwise as a common citizen we observe, but we have our like dissipated ideas about, right? So I could properly formulate of how this entire circle works. So in that sense it was a very very defining or pivotal or learning experience for me, and that is what has shaped my recent journey as well. So like I went into the I worked with the government, few political parties, ran their election campaigns, and I really got attached to this process of how you can do good through governance and through these political platforms, right? So, and then just the last year, December 2022, I was nominated as a director for Y20, which is G20's youth engagement group. Right? So I'm extremely thankful to our honorable Prime Minister for giving me this opportunity. And I have worked with the government for Ayushman Bharat, so they gave me the track for health, well-being, and sports. So I am really is really excited to contribute with my existing learning and also learn more from various delegates in the G20 grouping. Right. So in that sense, it has been very great journey, and I'm looking forward to how I use these last 3 years experience to shape my next 30 years of life.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And Lakshit, what have you been doing before 2020, before the pandemic, essentially?
Yeah, so I graduated. I have done an engineering from PEC, Punjab Engineering College, Chandigarh, right? And I went on to work with ZS Associates after it. I had a brief stint with McKinsey as well, and then I worked with ZS Associates. So I worked in the consulting domain, essentially with healthcare, pharma companies, which were the clients for these for ZS and McKinsey, right? So I worked with them, did a lot of analytics, did a lot of problem solving, and tried to make some business impact. But somehow, somewhere down the line, I felt that the impact was somewhere else, right? Like, because most of these clients were based out of the US, right? And I felt that I need to feel something closer home, right? I want to see how my work or what I'm doing on a day to day basis impacts people that I regularly see, that I meet on the road, going from my office to home and home to office, right? So that made me transition, and I went on to work with the government of India. I was fortunate to be part of the founding team for Ayushman Bharat. So I led the analytics team there. I set up the entire monitoring and evaluation team for that program. It was a very wide program, right? Impacts 55 crore people in the country, more than 10 crore families, right? Provides them 5 lakh health insurance per year, right? And saves about 6 crore people from falling back into poverty, right? So this was when I could see that, okay, this is what I'm doing, and this is how it is impacting, right? I got to visit a lot of villages, a lot of cities, a lot of healthcare centers, I interacted with a lot of people on the ground, and they would come to tell me that this is the problem we are facing, can you solve this, right? uh, and some of those problems we could really solve, and it was so good to finally see the impact of that work. So that is what I was doing. So it was mix of consulting, problem solving, and governance before 2020.
That sounds amazing. And I'm going to delve into it a little bit before we actually move on to, our main topic for the conversation. Do you recall any particular problem that you came across? Because these are highly complex problems that you were, involved with. And they have variables and in multiple dimensions, and there are things that you don't really, even count for. And there are, things which are never part of the problem statement, but they only surface later on. So, do you recall any particular incident where you were there and some things just took you by surprise, and how did you manage to solve them?
Yeah, actually, I'll over deliver here, right? I'll give you two examples. You asked for one, but I'll give you two. So, like, one of the problems was that in the initial architecture of the program, right? So the program was designed in a way that there was a pre-prepared list of beneficiaries that government decided these are the 55 crore people who would be the beneficiaries under this program, right? But how do you identify if on ground this is the same person as in the list, right? So the initial architecture said that every beneficiary will give some document, and someone will manually screen, right? Someone will say that, okay, this is Lakshit Mittal's Aadhaar card, driving license, whatever, and this is Lakshit Mittal on the list. So compare me, my photo, my parents, my age, etc., etc. Manually do this and say that, okay, now this is a valid Lakshit Mittal, and you can issue him an e-card, right? Which is essentially enrolls me into the program, right? Uh, But now, given the manual intervention and given the scale, right, what this did was there was a lot of backlog. So at a particular time, there were about 20 lakh people waiting to get their cards, right? And see, these are they're not just waiting for the getting their to get their e-cards; they're waiting to get treated, right? Some of them have serious diseases, right? Very serious diseases, right? So they're waiting to get treated. So and this is none of no one's fault, right? Like it's not the government's fault, it's not the person's fault, it's not anyone's fault. So what I thought is like, okay, like I need to solve this, right? So I found this problem on one of my visits to Kerala, right? And I was like, I want to solve this. So I had earlier done some data science work. I thought, okay, this can be, an algorithm can be built on this, right? This can be solved. This is a data problem. I have two data sets. I need to identify if the two data sets give me the same result or not, right? So this can be done. Let's put a data science algo to this and get this solved, right? So we did build that algorithm. I was glad that there was will from the senior leadership, from the CEO of the program, from the ministry, etc. Right? So there was will, and they gave me the opportunity to build this, and we built it. And imagine, so a person waiting for 10 days for the e-card now had to wait just for 10 seconds. So and that 20 lakh queue got cleared like in within span of minutes, right? So that was the level of impact as well. And also that was the level of a simple solution, which in the corporate world might look like a simple solution, right? But in government and in areas where you impact at such a scale, it becomes a lot more complex, right? So but a simple algorithm could do this, and like I was fortunate enough to be able to do this, be part of this, right? And secondly, the second thing that I said for over delivery right, is the beneficiaries, they didn't know as to like how much of treatment they have already taken and what is their amount of insurance benefit left, right? Which is very important in order to plan, right? So medical treatments are generally of two types, right? One is elective and one is selective. So like which you can plan, they want to plan accordingly. They could never do this because they did not have that view, right? So we thought like, okay, this can be done. So everyone has mobile phones these days. Most of our beneficiaries had mobile phones. So let's make a mobile application of this, right? So we designed the mobile application, we got it built, and the senior leadership put it to the prime minister that this is something that we want to do. And fortunately the honorable prime minister said that, okay, I'll be the one launching this application because this has such great impact, right? So and then we had to get that application out within 1 month, but we were able to do this, and he launched it, so which gave it the user attraction adoption that it needed, right? So and now people had access to all their data, all their information, which was really helpful to them.
Wow. Well, these are amazing examples, and congratulations on doing this. I mean, you definitely did what you were supposed to do, and probably over delivered on top of that. And so, but like as you said, somebody from the corporate world, if you just take out all the context from it, they will be like, oh, essentially what you did was you figured out the KYC protocol for the insurance claim, and then you also prepared a dashboard for the consumer to see whatever is left. But when you did that for a program like Ayushman Bharat, which impacts 55 crore people, that is an astounding achievement. And I don't know, I mean, if you're still in touch with whatever is happening in Ayushman Bharat, but what other achievements or what other improvements have been made to the entire program?
Yeah. So otherwise, like this is what we were doing operationally, right? But there are a lot of policy level things which can be done, right? Like so, Ayushman Bharat in its starting moment was just an insurance benefit, right? That you get, right? So. And it's and like what makes this super complex in government system is that government like India is a federal country, right? So and health is a state subject, right? So it's not that like one person sitting at the center can decide that this needs to be done and it will flow down to 55 crore people. You have to meet 28 states, 8 union territories, right? You have to consult them, you have to bring them on board, you have to convince them that this is what is important, right? And they are the final decision makers. So it is any single change is that kind of an exercise, right? So we did that for the two things that we discussed, right? So that was the complex part, and so the team has been solving all of these complexities, right? They have been trying to bring multiple states on board, right? The coverage has been expanded in a lot of states to the universal level, that the entire state's population has been covered under the program, right? So the team could make the states realize the impact of this program, and they convince the states to expand to all the people in the state, right? That is one. The other is that the in 2019, the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, actually launched Ayushman Bharat Digital Health Mission, right, which is ABDM. Now, which what this does is that there's a lot of healthcare challenge in the country is about connecting primary, secondary, and tertiary care. Right. I'll skip the details about this, technical details about this, but uh, basically, people do not go to the right uh, doctor, right? Like if I need a primary care doctor, if I need to consult a primary care doctor, I might end up going to a secondary care doctor, right? So that is one gap, and the other gap is that I might not remember my history, right? I might have developed one disease today which is connected to another disease which I faced like 5 years ago, but I do not remember it, right? So it's not there. So right, this is the program. This is the problem that ABDM solves, right? So that has been launched, and that has been going really well. From what I know, is it has reached about 2 crore people already in the country, right? 20 million people. So these are some of the great new things that that they've been doing. So and based on the one another example is that you said you're a COVID podcaster, right? So one prime thing that each of us faced during COVID is the COVID application, right? The CoWIN application was designed on Ayushman Bharat technical architecture, right? That was essentially like had its inspiration from Ayushman Bharat architecture. Saw how to issue certificates live, how to track the vaccination delivery live, right? So and they built the CoWIN application from it, and so this Ayushman Bharat program was run by National Health Authority (NHA). Right? So NHA was one of the bodies which was pivotal in developing this COVID application as well. So all of the vaccines that we have, I would say thanks to NHA for it.
All right. Wow. I want to go deeper and deeper into this because this is such a fascinating topic in itself. Um, but I'm gonna control myself over here. And so, Lakshit, now can you explain once more? And sorry for this because probably we've discussed quite heavy stuff already. And just to bring the listener back to the context once more, can you tell us what exactly you're doing right now? What all positions you hold, and so on?
Yeah. So currently, I am doing two different things essentially. One is I'm working with the G20 grouping. I'm a track chair at G20 Youth, right? Which is so G20 is a global organization for viewers who might not know, right? It's a global organization. It has top 20 economies from the world, right? 86% of the global GDP is represented in G20, and 60% of the global population is represented in G20. And India is presiding over G20 this year, right? So under it, I'm the track chair for it. So we are consulting all the stakeholders in India. And also the G20 nations, seeing what are the challenges that India can help solve, right? And seeing what are the challenges that the world face, which India's leadership can help solve through everyone's consensus, right? So that is what we are doing. So under this G20 Youth, we have multiple meetings, we have multiple consultations, we have multiple programs. We are holding Y20 Chopals, we are holding Y20 Talk, we are holding Y20 consultations, right? Across universities, across schools, across the length and breadth of the country, right? And across expert people as well as like citizens, right? It's not limited to experts, it's also to citizens, right? Like, what does the citizen feel is the global problem, and if they think that this can be a solution, we are more than happy to hear, right? So we are going out to the world, to the country, and asking them, okay, what is your point of view that can shape India's point of view, right? So that is one thing that I'm doing at the moment. The second is that I'm working with a health tech startup based out of Gurgaon. So we are trying to solve some healthcare problems here again. It's a stealth startup as of now, so like not a lot of details that I have for now. But trying to do something, if can be good in terms of bettering patient access and patient treatment.
Amazing. So, which brings us to the core of the conversation now. Lakshit, you have been, working with the government as a youth leader, as a consultant. And mostly when people think about youth working with the government, they think about student unions, political leaders for student bodies, who eventually, grow into the political parties, become yuva neta and youth leaders, and then, climb the hierarchy slowly and slowly, to essentially become, chief ministers and hopefully prime ministers, right? um, how is youth governance? How do you see youth governance in today's times different from the traditional political route that has existed since modern India?
Yeah. So I think see, there's a lot of difference that has come about today in politics as well as governance. Like, of course, both are linked, right? But there's a good amount of difference as well. Now, politics, I would say that you see as something that that one should pursue if they want to do good when they are in government, right? Governance is not about doing good when in government. Governance is about doing good round the clock, right? Because the people have their problems and there needs to be good governance out there, right? So there is that distinction for sure, right? Like, once you're into politics, you're aligned with the political party, you need that political party alignment, right? For government, you do not need that. For government, you need an alignment. You need alignment with the people's problem, right? So if you think that this is one problem that the country is facing, that the people are facing, or this is one area whose problems I want to solve for the country, for the world, right? Then you pick those problem areas, and I'm sure every political leader or every government stakeholder would want to listen to you because it helps them solve the people's problem, right? So you're not party centric but problem centric, right? Then also, like, politics has a different skill set, right? Politics is essentially about channelization, right? It is about seeing what the ground or what the people or what the voters want, and then channelize to the right people to be able to solve this, right? Governance is not about channelization. It can be about channelization, but it is more about innovation, right? How to solve large scale problems with newer ideas, with newer solutions, right? Uh, for example, like, payments was a big challenge in the country for a long amount of time, right? Um, you had UPI, and now all of us, I think, have immense adoption to UPI, right? Like, we can't imagine a world without UPI, right? So now we see other countries, when some people visit, for foreign lands, they really miss the UPI there, right? Like, because the you see the ease of living that it has provided to people, right? That interaction. So, like, UPI is such a great solution to one problem, that people should have better financial interactions, right? So in governance, you need to identify these problems. In politics, you might need another other type of skill set, and you might need another type of alignments. But if you really want to contribute, if you really are impact driven, right, governance, or you a person participating in governance is always a possibility.
Wow. So, unless and until you're a problem solver, you can't really become part of the youth governance, then, is it?
See, I think unless you're a problem solver, there is only so much that you can do in the world, right? So it's not that you can't be, right? It is that problem solving is one of the skills that you should have in order to drive and solve a problem. But of course, there are identified problems, there are identified solutions, right? Like, it's like saying, um, do the operations of the solution do not matter, right? They do, right? So if you're good at operations, if you're good at something, getting something delivered, right, of course there is space for you, right? It was more of a philosophical or a logical differentiation, but yeah, there's space basically, right? And I'm sure, like, I would, like, it's a personal recommendation that if someone does not see themselves as problem solvers, they should work with someone on a problem they are solving and imbibe those skills, right? Absolutely important, irrespective if you're in governance or not.
Perfect. Well, sorry for putting you in the spot over there. Why I asked that question was primarily because a lot of young people who listen to this, they should know that 21st century skills. One of the skills is problem solving, critical reasoning, and and it's not only problem solving; it's complex problem solving because the world is becoming increasingly complex, and the world of governance and politics and leadership of a country, or leadership of citizens, is extremely complex. It's not at all simple. In fact, many political leaders, many thought leaders, many researchers, they akin becoming a politician to three major problem solving areas that they have to counter. One is getting elected, which itself is a huge problem in a democracy. Second is governance, which means once you're elected, then you have to make sure that things go according to what you have planned for. And third is policy making, and which itself is a completely different Pandora's box altogether. And there are very few, if at all any, leaders in the entire world, in our modern history of the last 200, 300 years, who are excellent in all three. It is just very difficult to do that, and that is why there's always a team behind good governance, good government, and so on and so forth. And you can be part of that team as a youth. So it's not just about solving highly technical problems that Lakshit does, but also solving problems in different areas as well.
So just to add here, Saurabh, like absolutely great point you made, right? So, and I'm no technology savvy person, right? I just try to do bare minimum with what I know. But having said that, right? So like, so I think what is also important to understand is that uh, the country needs its youth to participate more and more in governance, because this is the first time that we have a truly globalized, educated, learned youth, right? In the past, if you see, the literacy levels were not as high. The globalization was not as deep rooted, right? Now, at the click of the phone, at every youth's hand, you have access to the world, right? So that is the skill set that our youth has, and that is the skill set that is needed to solve governance problems or to be participant in governance, right? Uh, like we often tend to say, like, we hear people saying that political leaders are lesser educated, not literate, etc., right? But let's take that mindset off for a minute and realize that politics is a different skill set, right? And that skill set is not harbingered on education, on formal literacy, right? But once that leader is in power, once that leader comes to defining policy priorities, what they need is the globalized, educated youth to provide your perspective, right? So you are now essential, and all the leaders, right, in their sane mind, are looking for youth's participation, and for you to lead from front the problem areas, the solutions that they want to see in the country, right? So there is absolutely great political will to involve the youth. It is time that the youth steps up and brings their skill sets to the table for India to be able to solve its problems, and for the world to be able to solve its problems.
Absolutely, I think that makes complete sense, because we have the largest youth population in the world, and if we do not make use of this demographic dividend, then we are missing out. Essentially, it's not that we're going to die or anything like that. No, we're still going to be there, but then we are missing out on this opportunity that the youth is there. And probably I personally feel that with the industry changing, we are in the industry 4.0 or society 5.0, whatever you might want to call it. We're in that age where people intensive work is reduced, from going to factories and so on and so forth. So what will essentially people do, and when I say people, the new youth which is coming into the workforce, right? What will they do? And I talk about this a lot in whenever I talk about future of jobs, that if machines are going to do your work, then what are you going to do? Well, you are going to do what only humans can do, which is solve problems of other human beings. And India's youth, China's youth, Pakistan's youth, Nigeria's youth, Indonesia's youth is poised to do that, because these are the countries which are dealing with simultaneous issues of not being developed yet, at the same time having a huge population who needs work and to be engaged. And this is where we need to, completely channelize their energies to.
Right. So you mentioned about Industry 4.0, right? Like that is one of the themes that we have raised in Y20 this year, right? That one of the themes that we are addressing, right? So you see that the political leaders at that level know, and they realize that we need to prepare ourselves for the upcoming changes in the industry, in the technological area, right? It is now for us to provide the solutions. It is now for us to say that, okay, this is how we can take advantage, right? So India missed out on industry 1, 2, 3, right, because of various reasons, colonialism, etc., right? So but now we have no reason to miss out on industry 4.0, right? And the political leaders, the political stakeholders have realized this. They have put the political will behind this. They have brought this as a theme under Y20 this year, right? So it is now for us to help the country realize how to best utilize this opportunity. The machines, the industry 4.0 is yet to be developed, and we, as the largest, as the youngest country, one of the youngest countries in the world with the largest, youth population, we are the people that the world is looking to, right? It's not just India; it's the world that is looking to us to define the next few decades and century.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, the challenge over here, Lakshit, I feel is when I because I deal with youth on a daily basis. That's essentially what my profession is, right? My day job. And when I talk to youth, none of them have ever thought of going into governance, going into politics, maybe a little bit about policy making. That too, when I tell them what policy making is all about, then they start thinking about it, but they've never really thought about it. They don't really want to go with it. I'm talking about youth which comes from the privileged backgrounds in the country, like you and I, right? Because only they can afford some of the services that we have, mentorship and counseling and so on. Whereas the rest of the population which cannot really afford these services yet, and they are not privy, or they do not have access to the kind of opportunities that we are probably theorizing about sitting in our comfortable AC rooms right now. They will look at power from a very different lens. They look at power, prestige, access, and growth from a perspective of the local leader, because there are no other reference points. So when they look at local leaders, they hardly find any local leaders worth emulating, because getting into the development sector is has its own challenges. So most youth will not really be very enthusiastic about it. They see government servants, collectors and commissioners and so on and so forth. They know they will have to study too much, the competition is too high, it again fizzles out. Otherwise they look at another government job which again takes certain things to get into. So essentially, even if you get into them, they're not really leaders. So when they see the local leader, they look at the politician, they look at the MLA, they look at the party leader who is there, and that youth gets inspired by that person a lot, which creates this huge divide between the youth sitting in AC offices and the youth in the rest of the country, the real India probably. And that is why there is this huge gap between them. Do you think that gap reducing now, or how can we do it? How can we reach out to more people to actually tell them that this is not how it is, how you might be thinking it is anymore? It is very different.
Yeah. See, so I think like in my interactions over the last few years, when I've visited like lots of villages across the length and breadth of the country, right? A lot of tier 3, tier 4 cities, right? My interaction tells me that the perception that we have is slightly biased and preconceived, right? The youth today absolutely is aware of what they want, right? They do look up or they do follow their local leaders, right? But they also pinpoint when they're not doing something right, right? And they know how they want to chalk out their territory, right? So that thing is starting to shape up, because now it is not limited to local, right? So like everyone sitting anywhere in the world, right, has access to what the leaders in the US are thinking, what the leaders in Europe are thinking, what leaders in the country at the central level are thinking, right? So everyone has that information access. That information is no more binding on these young people, and that there is no gap of information between what is available to a metropolitan youth and what is available to the youth in tier 3, tier 4, or villages, right? So that gap has absolutely gone, right? And the youth is aware. So I think that is a slightly distinct understanding that I have drawn for myself in the last few years. But having said that, right, so I see a lot of people, like I was just day before yesterday talking to one person who comes from a village near Indore, has the startup called Harvestify. Like, what they have done is they have brought 15,000 farmers under their collective, helping them understand what is the right crop to grow, right? How to grow this in proper quality, proper quantity, right? Considering the climatic factors, etc. And then they have built, engagements and built partnerships with major companies, such as Cadbury, such as Amul, such as, like you name it, in the F&B industry, right? So they have made that partnerships, and their channel is channelizing the output from these 15,000 farmers directly to these companies, right? So this is the youth that we're talking about from the tier 3, tier 4 cities, from the very hinterlands of the country, right? So now the youth is definitely doing it, the youth is looking forward to it, right? So uh, the only thing that might be lacking is at the personal level, how much of initiative that youth wants to take, right? How much of information gap in terms of access has reduced, but are they consuming the right information or not, right? So someone, I think, at a mentorship level, or at a guidance level, needs to see if there is a business model, if there is a workable model to reach to these people, and tell and guide them on how to utilize information properly, right? They are already doing it. There are already evidences that this has percolated. But with this framework in place, with this mentorship and guidance framework in place, we can accelerate it really fast, right? I think that's the difference we are going to bring. Otherwise, we absolutely have, you will see a lot more startups coming out of, these very small geographies as compared to metropolitans in the next few years. It has already started to happen, and it will continue to happen, and it will grow, right? Beyond startups, a lot of people from these places, from tier 3, tier 4, again, like these smaller geographies, have started to come and join MNCs, right? So like I started working in 2015, right? So, and I realized, so I this is just generally something that I see, right? I realized that a lot of people were from Delhi, Chandigarh, right? I come from tier 3 my city myself, right? So there were lesser people like me. Now I see more and more of people who have similar background to me, right? Like from a tier 3 city, from the villages, right? So that movement has already started. We need to see at a mentorship, at a guidance level, as to how we can accelerate this space.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, my next question was going to revolve around entrepreneurship, but you've already answered that. And I've discussed this with Ashutosh ji, who was there as a guest in the previous episode. He's the CEO of Jagriti Yatra, and they are trying to encourage entrepreneurship in Middle India. They call it Middle India because it's not the rich India, it's not the poor India, it's the Middle India, middle class. Everyone has their own definition of middle class, so they don't call it middle class, they call it Middle India. 700 million plus people, and the only way
Yeah.
to generate jobs or have equity in any way is to start your own thing, solve problems at a local level. And they're doing it in eastern UP, and which is probably one of those areas in India. Of course, development wise it is lagging behind, but it is also one of those areas where the trust factor is quite low. And in an entrepreneurial ecosystem, trust is important, and that's what Ashutosh and I discussed in the previous episode as well. And slowly that is changing as well. And more people are becoming facilitators, as you said, mentors are required. India is the is the global capital for many things. I discussed with Aditya Malia in one of the episodes about India is the fellowship capital of the world. India was already the NGO capital of the world in 2007 when Dr. Manmohan Singh actually announced it. And today, probably India is the incubation or startup incubation capital of the world, with having more than 1,800 incubators all over the country, and more are still coming in. So I completely resonate with you when you say, mentorship and things are changing and access to information is there. Absolutely. um Lakshit, my question is that, when somebody talks about politics, and because America is the biggest economy and the biggest cultural influence on the world, their democracy is one of the oldest, and one of the biggest. We see a lot of references from the American democratic model. No democracy is perfect, it cannot be, but we see a lot of references, right? We see that there are young students who are getting involved in debating clubs at high school level, and then they are moving on to the two party system. uh, Essentially they will probably be independents also later on, we don't know. But there is a very structured channel created over the last 100 years or so in the US, wherein the smartest of the class would aspire to be in politics. Maybe they, at initial level, they will be lawyers or somebody else, but they will aspire to be in politics because they know the smartest can only solve the most complex problems. I'm not saying that the system is perfect and they all the smartest people have been able to solve all America's problem, but there is a channel, there is a system over there. Do you think such a system exists in India? How does it exist? Obviously it has its own version. And if it doesn't exist, what are we doing in order to create such a system so that more and more smart, motivated people get into governance, get into politics, and get into policy making?
Yeah. So I think two parts of this answer, right? Like one, these things have started to come into picture in India as well, right? Like so, you see a lot of there's a boom of political consulting organizations in the recent few years, right? So and they give you the chance to earn your bread, work. Experience what politics is, experience what elections are, experience talking to people, etc., right? And decide for yourself if you want to be. And a lot of people from these organizations have taken a political plunge as well, right? So one is that sort of an ecosystem which has started to shape up. Second is there are a lot of think tanks which have come about, right? Like and they provide you the opportunity to do ground reporting, to do some research work at the ground to understand what the real issues are and channelize to the government, and then be involved in the political process as well, right? Some of the solutions are at the government end, some of the solutions are at political end, right? So they help you connect. And in the I just to quote an example, right? In the current cabinet, if you see, right, you have so many people who are not active politicians, right? Who have worked extremely well, in their areas. They have made their mark, they have contributed immensely in terms of governance, in terms of leadership, but they do not have a typical grassroots rising to where they are currently, right? So there is acceptance as well, right? The political process in that terms, in that sense, has become a lot more open, right? So there is acceptance, right? That is the, so there are absolutely these channels, but of course there can be a bit more structured formulation, there can be more structured way outs, right? And that will eventually show up. Every democracy is in a different stage of development, in a different stage of life, right? So and they develop in their own sense. But having said that, right, like now, to come to the second part of my answer, right? In my own personal opinion, I don't think structure is what is missing, which is restricting people from entering politics. It's the lack of understanding of what really politics is which is missing, which is restricting people from participating in politics, right? And like so when I started to work in this area, right, I started to like the immediate immediate questions, sort of, you will be surprised, I faced was Are you ready for the violence? Are you ready for the corruption? Right? How would you manage your finances? Right? How are you ready to be starving and working for a few years and then be filthy rich with corrupt money, right? So these are the questions, misnomers that I have been facing, right? But it's absolutely not the truth, right? You don't need money for politics, right? Like, you need money for politics, but you don't need that money to be in your pocket, right? If someone sees that you are proper at channelization, that you have a political mindset, that you have the orientation to be able to use a political platform correctly, someone will put the money behind your back, right? So there is that room which you need to fill in first before someone else fills in with the structure, right? And politics is a groundwork activity, right? Politics is about understanding people, about understanding people's problems, right? So till the time one doesn't do that, right, there is limited scope of getting proper political participation or to be of immense value in the political process. This is in my personal opinion. Someone might disagree, but I feel so, right? So you really need to see if there is a structure, or with the lack of the structure, can you really go out and see what the people's problems are, right? Because once you do that, you have a say, right? Once you do that, your perspective will change, I'm sure, right? Like, a lot of people, for just for example, like, a lot of people have their opinion on reservation, right? uh, let's say, right now, it's a very politically sensitive topic to touch. It's a very, but everyone have their opinions, right? I, what I'm saying is that you go out on the ground and realize for yourself what is the reality of caste in India. Is there the reality today, or is it not? Right? And find the answer for yourself. And you don't need any structure for this, right? Just go out on a weekend, talk to people, right? See who are the people working in slightly lesser skilled jobs, who are the people working in better skilled jobs, right? See with a caste lens, right? And you'll get your own answer, right? So it is also the initiative that one has to bring, right? There was an era in Indian politics and Indian governance when money played a bigger role, when criminals, like, when it was a lot more factors, right? But now the system has become a lot better. The system has become governance delivered. The people want delivery, right? People have stopped to vote if they get a 500 rupee note on the day of voting, right? It is absolute myth that you can win elections with money today. Like, you might give out a lot of money to the people, they might accept, but they'll not vote for you, right? Because they realize who is going to deliver. The delivery has become the central pivot of political process, right? So you need to understand and see that if you can deliver or not. That is the essential skill that you need to build, and then the political process is absolutely open.
Great, great. I'm going to shift the topic, because again this is one of those rabbit holes that we might not come out of, because we'll have different opinions and so on and so forth. And but I completely love the optimism that you're bringing back with your real experiences, because it is changing. Things are changing. It might not be visible to all at the same time in the same way, but things are changing, and that is why the future looks better than what it is today. Um, so Lakshit, there is this huge aspect of data. I think it was the later years of the last decade, the first decade of 2000, when data and technology really started impacting Indian politics a lot. And the biggest parties started investing a lot in it. The government started investing 2008, I think, when the UIDAI project was launched, and so on and so forth, right? How does data matter today, and has it been able to bring more transparency, or has it been still at at a level where some people can control it?
Great question, Saurabh. And just to be clear, I don't think UIDAI was a political data process. It was a governance data process, right? So I'll just draw that distinction. So, but great question. That I think there's a lot of data, you know, centricity that has built in the political process as well, in the governance process, right? A lot of the policy making has started to be decided based on real life evidence, right? uh, Earlier, I think the mechanism to decide policy making, to decide a policy, might have been that, okay, this looks good to do, let's do this, right? Now I can assure that the policy making mindset has changed. People first of all ask that, what where is the data, right? Where is the evidence that this is the problem, and this is the problem, how it is impacting, what geography, what demography, what age, what gender, right, etc. Like, who is it impacting, right? So there is definitely that data centricity that has come about, and there are a lot of platforms, a lot of organizations which have come about around this, right? Secondly, data has also become very centric to political process, right? uh, Now, the time for centrally decided things have stopped, right? You see that it's the people who are guiding, that this is their core need and this is what they want solved in this elections, right? And the leaders, the political stakeholders, do know this, and they do have immense focus on understanding this before they prepare their election pitches, right? The election manifesto process, right, that every party releases, has become a lot more data centric. They first go out in the ground and see what are the problems that people are facing, right? They try to understand each constituency, can be assembly constituency or parliamentary constituency, right? But there is that data orientation which has come about. But having said that, data is a very subjective thing, right? The more of data you have, it adds to complexity, and the lack of data you have, it adds to a good amount of challenge as well, right? So Indian governance and politics, I think, is at a slightly nascent stage in that sense, right? We do not have great amount of data to be able to really guide good policy, good politics yet. The systems have start to come about, but there's a lot of systemic things that we need to bring in. There's a lot of data standardization that needs to happen. There's a lot of data separation that needs to happen before it enters into political process. For example, privacy is a big aspect, right? So I don't want my health data to be shared with any political or governance uh, stakeholders, but I do want them to account for me when it comes to health policy making, right? So their data separation is one of the things that we need to tackle a lot more deeply, right? So there are these avenues available which need to be built, but data centricity and data, like, mindset around data, has definitely started to build.
Perfect, perfect. In fact, some of you who are listening to this, and if you feel that you want like to know more about data, we had a fascinating conversation with Som Paul and Devashri Rakshit a few episodes ago and a few months ago. They are building their startup based on blockchain, and they're doing wonderful things over there. They talk about data in a very different way because India is one of the four models in the world where how data is being used differently. We use data for public welfare, which is now being I would say emulated by various other economies. I think some 78 countries in the world want to use the UPI system now. If I'm not mistaken, there might be more.
Yeah, it's a proper India stack now. So it's not just UPI. Yeah, so Singapore recently launched UPI, right? So you might know, and then now it's a proper India stack, which includes, I think, more than 10 services under its ambit, which India is now exporting, in, exporting to the world. Now India has become that solution provider, right? Like, and we need to take absolute pride in it, right? Like, so our technology, our services sector has groomed itself so much, so well, that we are able to build an India stack and sell it to the world out there.
No, absolutely, absolutely, and this is critical to the world's development as well. In fact, even if you talk about SDGs, and I look at SDGs how they are, but I also see them from a very data centric perspective. That essentially SDGs is a data collection exercise. That data comes in from all different corners of the world. It's fed into the different indicators, and then we use those indicators to see whether the goals have been achieved or the targets are being achieved, which further fuel into the goals being achieved, and so on and so forth. So data has become that part which can essentially help us whether to know whether the world is moving in the right direction or not. And now the challenge, there are of course challenges with data as well, as and you mentioned it, as being a data scientist yourself, you mentioned them so beautifully. That's amazing. And that is another way you can get into youth governance, by the way. A lot of young people who are listening to this. Lakshit, you know, we've talked so much, and I'm not going to take more time, but I definitely want to know, G20 presidency, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is for 1 year for every country, right, in the G20. And it has started for India. Looking forward to the next 10 months in this. But what after that? What are the plans after that? And the second part of this question is personally for you, because you are one of that segment of youth who have involved themselves in the youth governance so intricately. In fact, you actually remind me a lot about Shankar Shivam Singh, who got involved in with the BJP in 2013, and currently he's pursuing his Schwarzman Fellow program in China. So, what are your plans for the future as well?
Yeah, okay. I'll go with the first question, right? So G20 presidency, like India is absolutely, as the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister guided, like G20 presidency, India absolutely wants to be impactful and decision oriented, and real life. Implementation oriented. It doesn't want to just focus on a white paper development or a theoretical development, right? So there is absolutely going to be great focus on what can be done, what are the consensus that India can help draw, and India is absolutely rightly placed to be able to do that, both in terms of culturally, both in terms of its position in the global ladder, right, and both in terms of its own solutions oriented mindset and its diversity that it brings, right? So we really can help the world put different pins together to make a coherent story, right? So that is definitely there. And going forward, I think what is important is that uh, G20's presidency in India has come at a very crucial time in the world, right? So this is the first like first year of G20 when all the engagements are happening offline after COVID, right? The earlier two presidencies were completely online, right? So it has it's come at a very crucial time, and the world is facing immense challenges, right? There's a conflict going on in the Eastern European part of the world, right? There is inflation, there is challenges to the economy, there is rising healthcare risks, right? There is changing dynamics in terms of industry 4.0 that we talked about, right? So all of that is what we will want to provide solutions to. And once those solutions have been defined this year under India's presidency, India will be leading a lot of these solutions going forward for the world, right? There are other platforms. So we are a member of the G20. The presidency might not be there, but will be a member, right? So we'll continue to build on the solutions that we have provided and get them implemented across the board, right? We are participants in other international organizations, right? So, and we have that scale, and we have that buy-in from other countries that they're willing to listen and be helped by India, right? So we will continue to drive the brand India has established itself, and we will continue to use it to help ourselves as well as help the other people in the world, right? So I think that's with the G20 presidency part, right? So like coming to the second question, I think personal plans is to use this platform, this opportunity to the best, to help the country, to help myself learn a lot more about the subject, about people, about perspectives, right? And build on this learning to help solve more problems, reach out to the world, understand what we were able to facilitate and what we could not facilitate. One of the things that I really really want to do going forward is help startups in the uh, like across the geographies, but essentially in the middle India, as you said, right? Or some people also draw this distinction of India and Bharat, right? So startups in the Bharat part of the country, right? Really help them. I would really want to help them build and like solve them few initial challenges, raise that money that a lot of startups are looking for, build the technology teams that they're looking for, right? So I really hope to learn from people as to the solutions that they're working for, and contribute to their solutions development and business development in whatever capacity I can.
Amazing. So we're looking at an amazing mentor for all the youth who are especially interested in the healthcare sector to solve problems, but also getting into governance, youth and youth engagement, and so on and so forth. Um, Lakshit, last two questions, very small questions. If you were to give some career advice to young people listening to this, some people who want to probably emulate your steps in the career, what advice would that be?
So I think two advices. One, like you can choose your passion, work for it, right, and ensure that you give earn your bread at the end of the day. But in the middle of all of this, right, make sure that you go out in the on the ground and learn about life, learn about people, learn about their problems. Take a few months break, take a few weeks break, take a year break, or whatever permits your time span or your activity, right, or your dynamics. But do take out that time and see the world, right? And the second advice connected to this is not, it is not a professional thing, but I see a lot of people focus on travel, which is a great thing. There's a lot more activity in the travel tourism industry, but I would suggest that visit than just travel, right? So in Hindi, what we say is that प्रवास भी करो सिर्फ पर्यटन नहीं करो ठीक है सो थोड़ा प्रवास भी करिए visit a place, be there and talk to people, understand their life, their culture in depth, and see what how we can help cross cultural collaborations to solve better integrate the society at large.
Amazing, amazing, and just I think a couple of weeks ago, I finished my article, which was pending since September. If you remember, I had shared some photos with you when I was in Himachal, and we were both chatting about that. So I finally finished an article around career breaks and why they're important for you, even if you're just a student. So I'll put the link of that in the episode notes, guys. I've given some tips how to approach career breaks, and I think you have Lakshit's advice now to probably do and implement it. Lakshit, last question. If there is a single sentence or a one liner that you would like to give the world to make the world a better place, what would that be?
Back. So I think one line that I can share is is investing in youth and passion is the least risk and most high return investment that you'll ever do. So do invest in youth around you and do invest in your passion with full confidence and with full rigor.
Amazing. Beautiful. Lakshit, it was an amazing conversation with you. Thank you so much for taking out the time and sharing all these wonderful insights with us.
Thank you so much, Saurabh, for having me. It was great talking to you, and I look forward to meet your audience sometimes. And I please do, guys, do connect on LinkedIn or whatever, wherever you want to. And I'm happy to talk to you in person in detail as well.